Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here in the year 2023. I'm your host, the great Brian Last. I have no idea what we're going to talk about today, and that includes this man, the leader of the cult of Cornette, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Oh boy, a second program into the new year, and already you're disavowing, Mr. Phelps, you disavow any knowledge of your activities. You're basically just coming right out at the top of this program, your show, the one that you shepherd the flock on, the one that you drive the train, the one that you pilot the plane, the one that you captain the ship. I could go on with these similes, but nevertheless, this is your program, and already at the top of it, before I have even uttered a syllable, much less a multisyllabic phrase, you're just saying, fuck it, it's not my fault. I don't know what we're doing today. It's up in the air. Let's throw some darts at the wall. What is this, AEW booking here? I would expect more from you in the new year, Brian. We got the rest at the holiday season. We got all fired up and ready to go. How can they miss us if we don't go? We went away just long enough for them to miss us. Now we're back. We got to have positive outlooks on these programs. We got to dissect and analyze and retrospect and sanitize all of the goings on in the wrestling world on this program, as well as on my program, The Experience, where I never open it up by just placing the blame purely in your lap, pal.
You're putting me to sleep. You're putting me to sleep.
Oh, come on. I thought that was a rah-rah speech.
No. It was a go-to-bed speech. Sleep.
I just speech a little bit there. I just told you before we went on the air, if we get done with this program quickly enough, my world famous chicken sandwiches are on the menu tonight. Fried chicken in a deep fryer with cheese and onions and lettuce and all the good sauces on a big old toasted burger bun. And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch me, the Flim Flam Man. Have you ever seen the movie The Flim Flam Man?
He's a wrestler, right?
No, George C. Scott.
I know.
Have you seen the movie?
I have seen the movie, yes. Many years ago.
I haven't. You've seen something that belonged to a relative of mine if you've seen the movie. I haven't seen this movie in 30 years, hadn't come across it, and I recorded it. I think it was on the Turner Classic. But it was on TV the other night, and I recorded it. And I'm going to sit down and watch it because they shot that movie, partially at least, I guess. This is in Cornette family lore here. They shot the movie partially on location out around, well, the suburban Lexington. To make it small, it wasn't all the way at Eastern Kentucky, but out in the bluegrass region. I think down around Lawrenceburg, maybe. I could be wrong. But my uncle, Leslie, actually, and my Aunt Lulie, her name was Lulu, but Lulie went better with Leslie, so they became Leslie and Lulie. They were my great aunt and great uncle. Then he had a farm down near Salvisa, Kentucky, and we used to visit when I was very small. He was elderly then, in his 70s, when I was 10 years old, so I'm assuming he's gone now. But anyway, so the story was always told that Leslie was in town in his truck the day of some of the filming, because every once in a while, I remember when I was a kid, when this first came up on network television, the movie The Flim Flam Man, and they would show it, Aunt Lola always had to watch, and she'd point and she'd say, "There's Leslie's truck," because his truck was actually in the background of one of the scenes. And that was as close as anybody in my family came to television or movie exposure in those days. I don't know what in the world happened.
A scintillating topic here this week.
Well, I'm just telling you, I don't know what happened to great uncle Leslie and great aunt Lulie. They're the ones that took my youngest uncle when my mother's mother, when she died, she had just given birth to my youngest uncle, Raymond. And he was only like 3 months old. So as they did in those days, when they had too many kids, because my grandfather then already had my Uncle Harold and Aunt Lola, as well as my mom, so they gave the baby to Aunt Lulie and Uncle Leslie, who I believe were on my grandmother's side of the family.
And like all good Raymonds, he changed his name to Bobby.
No, he changed his last name, just it made it easier in school, but they didn't do paperwork back then in those days. I don't really know how all that stuff worked out when they brought in the Social Security and things like that. But that's a topic for another show. You know what's a topic for this program, Brian?
I have no idea what's a topic for this program.
I'll tell you, the grand reopening of the Cornette's Collectibles store at JimCornette.com. Already the response has been overwhelmingly positive. People there's been skywriting, banners coming down Broadway. After our restocking and inventory period, the store at JimCornette.com is open with the brand new Hot Lazy Booking t-shirt and restocked on the Cornette face shirts for those of you who were turned away at the door when there was no more room at the inn. This is going to be a day of similes here. And there is under 90, possibly even under 85 Raw debut variants, the pink Raw debut variant outfit in the way of Jim Cornette action figures. We're on the last 85 or 90 of those. If you've been on the fence, now's your time to fall off the fence or the wagon or whatever you've been perched on that you're trying to take a leap off of. Did I ever tell you the story about the time that the mayor fell off a fire truck and hit my mother on the foot?
No, you have not.
Well, it just made me think of it, being on the fence and falling off or whatever. This was the last stop when the volunteer fire department, such as it was in my little community back in those days, 1 truck and 4 guys, would come to collect for the Crusade for Children because my mom would always have some refreshments and snacks for them because they worked hard and everything. And one day they decided to be just grandiose about the thing and bring not only the pickup truck that they had, the fire chief's truck. The fire chief was actually the most successful mechanic in town back in those days because the fire department was not a full-time occupation. You couldn't have a fire after 6 o'clock at night back in those days. Everybody was off. You were asked to wait until 7 the next morning. But anyway, they brought all the equipment, including the fire truck. And once they got the daggum fan, it wasn't even like one of the big modern jobs. This was early 70s. But once they got the fire truck up the driveway here, they couldn't get it out. They got stuck. And it took a while for them to back out on the little road and everything. So it was a rib they pulled on themselves. But while they were doing it, the guy was on the truck and waving or whatever, and the rear view mirror came off the truck, and my mom was standing there, almost hit her on the foot. And they had a big laugh about that. Well, the next year or 2, I can't remember, at our little community fair they had in the summertime, me and Aunt Lola were standing on the sidewalk looking at the balloons and all the stuff they had going on, and I was recounting to her the story of when the mirror almost fell off the fire truck and almost hit my mother on the foot. And some woman standing behind me thought that I said the mayor fell off, which he was known in those days to take a sip. And then the story started circulating that the mayor fell off the fire truck and nearly hit my mom on the foot. I was influencing politics even back then. You know what else is going on besides JimCornette.com?
No, what's that?
What's that?
Is there anything going on? I'd love to hear about it.
Yes, there is. I'll tell you exactly what it is.
The mayor fell off the truck, hit my mom's foot, and it's the most boring story I've ever told.
All right, it's Tim Conway and Harvey Corbin here. The cameos. We got to talk about the cameos. The Cameo personalized video messages are going on sale Saturday, January 28th at noon Eastern on the aforementioned JimCornette.com. The first time we've had time to do these in 1 year. And people have been clamoring and foaming at the mouth and frothing about and whipping their bodies in a frenzy like they were having convulsions, waiting for this to happen. Well, now the time, as they say, has come. And that's Saturday, January 28th at noon Eastern. You go to Cameo, Cameo, cameo.com/Jim Cornette, or just go to JimCornette.com and click on the Cameo button when the time arrives. You will be able to purchase one of these, and I will give your sweetie a kissin' or a cussin' for Valentine's Day. The St. Valentine's Day Massa Cameos tradition continues. And remember, they're going to be limited to about 75 or 80 because that's all we can produce and fulfill that week with our busy schedules, myself and Hotchkiss Featherbottom. So jump in the first couple of hours, or history dictates you may be left out. And I guess that's about the extent of that now. That's the most time I can fill for you right now, Brian. So I'm going to hand it back to you on your program, because that's my plugs, and you don't like my stories today. And I'm wounded. I'm cut to the quick.
You cut to the quick?
You've cut me to the quick.
I don't know that expression. Explain that expression.
What? You've never heard? Wait a minute. You have never heard that expression.
I don't think I have. Where would I have heard it? Well,
in public from humans? I don't fucking know. If you've insulted someone, or you've offended them, you've hurt them deeply, you've wounded them, you've cut me to the quick. Now you're going to be browbeaten by at least down south, by everybody in the whole world.
I doubt it.
The world of down south, I guess.
The world of down south.
You've cut me to the quick. You've wounded me, offended me.
Well, why don't we continue offending people and wounding people, and let's get this out of the way. Are there any reviews? Is there anything you watched that we have to hear about?
Yeah, you asked me to. You said, well, you're going to watch Smackdown, aren't you? When we last talked, I said, yeah, I guess I will. And then you're acting like your hands are clean and you're innocent of this whole matter.
The same thing that happens every week's about to happen. I'm going to tell you I didn't watch SmackDown, and you're going to mention several things, and I'm like, oh shit, I did see that. I walked through the room and I saw something.
Well, then let me try to jog your memory. Let me try to just pick you up and give you a little jiggle. Maybe a middle finger in there somewhere, just to get things flowing again. Does it remind you of anything if I said they were in Memphis? Memphis long distance information. Give me Memphis, Tennessee. Help me find a party. Tried to get in touch with me. They did not leave a number, but I know who to call. All those fucking disgruntled wrestling fans that didn't buy a ticket for this show, they're standing out in the hall. So they were in Memphis, and immediately they pull out the big guns. They're on network TV. They're riding high on the big rating from Cena previous week, right? This was January 6th. So out comes Zayn and Solo and the Usos, not from the entranceway, but they immediately, as the show opens and the announcers start talking, those guys all jump over the barricade at ringside and start breaking shit and throwing shit around. I'm like, what the fuck? There's nobody else out there. They're running roughshod, the Bloodline are. Of course, all that stuff's covered by WWE's insurance, I would think, the production equipment, etc. But anyway, they trashed ringside and awaited the entrance of Roman Reigns, and here he comes with Heyman standing and stooging gloriously behind him. And people love these heels, Brian. They're excited to see them. It's like big name stars have come to town, like some of the old days. We used to have big stars in wrestling. They're, again, star power, personality. They're the best thing on the show, and I was being a smartass when I said people love these heels. But here's a question for you before we talk about the interview they did. Is there any baby faces now in the WWE that any more than the current WWE diehard would support over these guys? Or anybody that is strong enough to compete in terms of personality and the way they've been booked and used? Or when Owens comes out there, I know a bunch of people like him, and he's a wonderful worker, but he looks like somebody took half the stuffing out of a fucking mattress compared to, Roman Reigns. And where are our superstar baby faces? That's my question to you on your show.
First of all, it's not my show. It's SmackDown. Second of all, it's hard to have cool baby faces when you have cool, funny heels. And the Bloodline are funny, and they're also badasses. Owens actually probably does as well as anyone at combating that because he could be a smartass on the mic and get people to laugh. But other than that, they don't have a lot of strong baby faces. That's why I think a lot of people internally are hoping Cody could deliver something when he comes back.
Boy, they need him. But anyway, in this particular interview segment, Roman wanted to hear from Sammy, and Sammy was happy and putting everybody over and putting everybody on notice that 2023 belongs to the Bloodline. We're going to send a message this year. Everybody won on Raw Monday night. But then Roman said, what about last year? Because Sammy's the one that lost the match with Cena and Owens last week. And at this point, again, Roman Reigns did a masterful job of building the whole thing up. I didn't lose. Sammy lost. Why did you call your shot? Why did you guarantee your win? Are you trying to be like me, do things like I do it? And he worked himself up, obviously in a working way, but it was perfect, natural, into a, you want to be me, motherfucker, type of, attitude. You could see him pissing himself off. And that it was excellent. And right as he really starts blessing Sammy out, as Aunt Lola used to say. By the way, did you know that my Uncle Leslie's truck was in the Flim Flam Man?
I heard that. I heard that earlier
today.
Yeah.
It's all over town. Here comes Owens' music, interrupts, and he comes out to the entranceway, and he said, Roman, your anger's misdirected. You're not mad at Sammy. You're mad at me. I caused all that. You've got a KO problem. And, of course, he makes the challenge to Roman Reigns' title match at the Royal Rumble. And Roman Reigns accepted. And everybody kind of left. So they got the business done. They needed to get done. And nobody cussed on a live mic and all the equipment worked or whatever. But it was a little flat way of... And once again, I mean, I'm the one who preaches, well, they can't jump people 16 times on every program. So, but it seemed like, because I mean, the people, when Roman was up in Sammy's face, they were right there. And okay, well, we want to see the match, but all right. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Have I jogged your memory yet?
No, I don't think I saw any of this.
Well, the first match, because that's just been a promo, was Kofi Kingston against Pablo Escobar. And after that, we were 30 minutes in. Back to the Bloodline. And there at the Bloodline locker room door, of course, and Paul has become like the fucking guy, the doorman in the Wizard of Oz, right? He's the guy, hey, get away, you can't see the wizard. Sammy's groveling to him.
More like the doorman at Studio 54.
Yeah,
Mark Benecke, I think was his name.
Oh, but by the time Paul got finished with him, it was Studio 46. But anyway, so Sammy's groveling to Paul. I'm not trying to be the tribal chief. You got to explain it to him. And Paul's like, I still love you. And he calls him Shmooly? Is that a thing from your people?
Yeah, it's a nickname.
Well, I guess Sammy now is honorarily Yiddish or Jewy. He's a Shmooly. Because they're doing that interplay with, I love you, Shmooly, but Paul loves him, but Roman, may be upset. So then they did the VTR of Captain Howdy attacking Bray Wyatt last week while LA Knight stood and, like we all did, wondered what the French fried titty fuck was going on. And then LA Knight did a promo. He reacted and he did a good promo as always. And we still know nothing about what went on because since he doesn't know the explanation, in storyline at least, and probably for real, he can't explain it to us. So his promo is about, you can't keep your goons in line. I don't know what the fuck. And then he's promoting a Mountain Dew pitch black match for the Royal Rumble.
Unless you pour the Mountain Dew out and then it'll be fluorescent green.
Well, hey, I'm about to have a colonoscopy coming up here shortly, and they've told me to stay away from certain colors of these things, but I think maybe they'll substitute the no blood policy. They'll have the strawberry or whatever, and he can just kick him real hard in the stomach and so, but yeah, they're going to, is that a Prince of Darkness death match? Is that a blindfold match? Is that a lights out match? Literally, is that what the fuck's going to go on here? And how bad is it going to make LA Knight look having to stooge for this falderall? Have you forgotten about Karrion Kross and Scarlett?
Oh, yeah, actually, I did.
Well, they were on the program. I'd actually forgotten, a couple months ago when they were going to be the hottest thing ever to come into the WWE. And now he's got not only a full, remember he was bald before, he was shaving. And yes, after Steve Austin, that look has been overdone, but he looked kind of mean when he was bald, old Karrion Kross. Remember that? Well, he's got a full head of gorgeous hair now that looks like he's been using herbal essence shampoo on it since the 70s. It's fluffy and it shines, and he looks like some fucking bodybuilder at the local gym now. He doesn't look very mean anymore, but he's coming out with Scarlett. I'm thinking, okay, let's see what Karrion Kross is going to do. Guess what match they had?
What match?
A mixed tag team match. Karrion Kross and Scarlett against, what is his actual real first name? Madcap, old Moss fellow. Whatever Moss his name is, and Emma. A mixed tag match with Karrion Kross went from he's going to fuck up the top guys in the company to having mixed tag. Remember when Stone Cold Steve Austin teamed with Stacy Keibler in that mixed tag match on Raw one night?
I don't know.
No, you don't. So apparently the finish of this thing was that Scarlett threw Emma over the announce desk and Karrion Kross choked old Moss out just right in the middle of the ring. I thought they were going to use him more seriously when they at least let him wear some type of wrestling apparel and took him away from Baron von Corbin. But anyway, apparently now Karrion Kross is messing with Rey Mysterio because after they choked Moss out and threw Emma, whoever she may be, over the announce desk, they put a Rey Mysterio mask on Moss's unconscious head. I guess your head's unconscious. When you're unconscious, your whole body, but especially your head, because that's where your consciousness comes from, right?
Certainly your whole body, as you said, would be unconscious. Yes.
But they didn't put the Ray mask on his whole body. They just put it on his head. If they'd have put it on his wingding, that'd have been fucking hilarious. Look at old dickhead Rey Mysterio.
Well, let me stop you for a second just because of the natural transition. They didn't put on a Ray mask. What about a Ray Khan?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Out of nowhere, Cinderella story.
But I can handle the fucking quick pitches, folks. I'll tell you what, if you're tired of hearing this drivel, which apparently Brian Last is, and you would like to hear whatever you want to hear, if you want to pick the soundtrack to your life, the programming that drives you, whether it's talk or music or just white noise, or possibly animal sounds, tigers, lions, and bears, oh my, whatever you want to listen to. You can use the audio accompaniment on your journey through life down that yellow brick road, behind that forbidden green door, and off that proverbial cliff. And right now, the fact is a good pair of wireless earbuds is indispensable in 2023. It was almost goddamn indispensable in 2022, and it was damn near necessary in 2021. And next year, you're going to need these things to breathe, folks. For premium audio at the perfect price point, you got to go with the Raycons. Raycons everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. And they taste pretty goddamn good, too. I mean, you got,
No.
What are your senses? Well, they look good, you can see. They feel good, you can touch. They sound good, you can hear. They smell pretty good, except I'll tell you what, I smelled a pair that had been in Stacy's Uncle Leroy's fucking ears. And these were the first Raycons that didn't really smell too good. But most of them smell good. And if you take care of them, they'll smell better longer, even though they're in your orifices. And they taste great, and they're less filling. They've got the optimized gel tips. You can pick your flavors. You have a strawberry, banana, pecan, whatever gel flavor you want. And they give you the perfect in-ear fit. Don't chew these things. Just put them in your mouth and suck on them slowly.
Don't put them in your mouth. Don't chew them, suck on them, or do anything else. Just put them in your ear safely and comfortably and listen to some wonderful tunes with Raycon.
Well, actually, if you want to win a karaoke contest, think about this. You could hide two of these bad boys in your jaw behind your molar.
How does that help?
And turn the volume up all the way.
How does that help in a karaoke contest?
Because then, if you turn the volume up all the way and you got them secreted in your jaw, well, then when the tune comes up that you picked, you already know what they're going to play. You've got it ready. You just sing it right into the microphone, but it's the Raycons. You'll sound just like Pat Benatar.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Diana Ross.
How would you know what they're going to play just because you have a Raycon?
Because you
where your molars are.
You programmed you got your fucking Raycons programmed to play the same song as they're going to play on the karaoke, and you just time it right and hit the button.
How are you doing that?
Well, how do you do anything with the Raycons that you listen to?
How are you syncing your Raycons with what the DJ is going to play next before they play it?
Because you ask when you go to karaoke, you say, now they've got Brian coming up to sing, oh, pardon me, handsome stranger, or whatever the fuck. And meanwhile, you've got it secreted right there where you can hit the button and you play it, and you got
hit the button?
Everyday earbuds. Yeah.
So you stick your finger all the way in your mouth right before you start?
Well, most people stick their fingers in their mouth when they hear me sing.
That's true.
But anyway, and you get quality audio at half the price of the other premium audio brands, folks, as well as the ability to win any karaoke contest in town. So it's no wonder that Raycon's everyday earbuds have over 50,000 five-star reviews, and they'd get more, but some people still have their fingers stuck in their mouth. And they're 3 customizable sound profiles. And you got the more bass, you got the less bass, and you got the fake karaoke setting. So you can win those contests. The earbud tap functions, noise isolation. You've got an awareness mode. It instantly kicks you up onto a higher plane of consciousness when you kick that in. It's like a turbocharger. One of the old 80s Cougars had those turbocharged motors. Just like that. You press that button, awareness mode instantly. It's like you spent months with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. You're aware. You're zen. Right now, you can go to Buy Raycon. That's BUYRAYCON, buyraycon.com/JCE right now, immediately this minute after listening to the rest of our program, and get 15% off your Raycon order. Buyraycon.com/JCE, 15% off of your Raycon order. What more can you expect us to do? We're giving you not only the ability to soundtrack your life, win every karaoke contest, you got a snack in your pocket with these customizable, optimized, flavored gel tips that you can put them in your mouth and suck them, and we're getting you 15% off and a higher plane of consciousness. BuyRaycon.com.
That's right, and let's somehow mercifully go back to this Smackdown review.
Is it still going on?
The Smackdown?
That's right. I dodged the curveball, and we're going to start back at, so Drew and Sheamus, they've been on the outs with each other for some time. They've had many Donnie Brooks and bangers and MASH. They've had the bangers and MASH many times. And they were at Jerry Lawler's Bar and Grill on Beale Street. And they were doing an interview with each other about how now they're on the same side. And basically, it was the most obviously scripted exchange of unconvincing, phony verbiage about their former rivalry that I've ever heard. And then at the end of it, all of the people sitting in the bar who were obviously not paying a lick of attention to him throughout the whole thing, heard their cue and started joining in a prearranged chant. So that was that. And then here came Charlotte. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind now, or should be, she is a complete, full-fledged babyface on this roster at this point in time. She came out, she thanked everybody. She's always been about passion, consistency, and dedication. It sounded like she was running for office of what a champion does and is. It was very good, but that's what she's doing. And suddenly, out of nowhere, here comes Cruella de Vil's music interrupting. So the other program, AEW, they will announce every goddamn match down to J. Fred Frog versus Jack Off the Wonder Donkey at 100 miles an hour, courtesy of Sockface, for every show for the next, couple of weeks with graphics to match. So if you not only are taking notes, but also if you're a trained courtroom stenographer, you can take down all the upcoming AEW matches. Here, they go on the air with SmackDown with the barest idea of a match or two they might have, and everybody just wanders out as the show progresses and makes their own. Have you noticed this, Brian Last?
That is a problem that has swept wrestling, yes.
So in this case, it was one of the latter. So here comes Cruella, and she starts cutting a promo on Charlotte, and the fans took it over. And I don't know if it's the Memphis Grizzlies. I saw a brief explanation on Twitter, and I don't have all the details. But there's a sports chant now in the city of Memphis at one of these sporting games. And they started doing it here to Charlotte about Cruella de Vil, which is whoop that trick. And the people just, for no apparent reason, in the middle of de Vil's promo, start chanting, whoop that trick, whoop that trick, whoop that trick. And they're drowning everything. And Charlotte's kind of about to snicker a bit. And she said something to the effect of, apparently they think you're a trick. And the place blew up. And Cruella finally gets her challenge out. And now, of course, Charlotte gets to ask the people, and they say, yes. So challenge asked and answered. We got a match. And suddenly, after this 10-minute buildup, Cruella jumps Charlotte from behind. And boom, 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 gets on her. But Charlotte turns it around and hits a big kick within about 15 seconds. And they go to the break. So they've spent 10 minutes building this. They send Charlotte out. They get her some goodwill. She gets over with people. They send Cruella out. She becomes a trick. The people get into it. They want to see him fight. Okay, boom. And now we at home are saying, what the fuck? They just pulled the rug out from under us. So that's what I'm talking about when I say that they make their own matches unimportant. If you were... Again, in any other sport, if there was a game or a match or a whatever appropriate verbiage, and they'd spent 15 minutes of television time building it up, I can understand we'll be back with the match right after this. But once the fucking fight, match, game, tournament, whatever starts, are you going to go to break within the first 15 seconds? Anyway, Charlotte was Charlotte in this.
What do you think of her? What do you think of her as a babyface?
She was good. Cruella de Vil's work is not great, but she has a great look and she's a great heel. Because she was actually healing with her bitch face and her, demeanor. She was actually trying to rough this opponent up rather than, the other heel girls that are the Barbie type heels or whatever. And I'll say one thing, Charlotte, she did a forward handstand round off or something into a clothesline. And I love Charlotte. She should take that one out and never do that one again. It didn't connect right or look right. But anyway, she hit a spear and got the figure 8 and won in a few minutes. So this was a good win for Charlotte. I'm not sure where Cruella's stock is laying at this point. And then they did a big, go ahead.
Any mention of Ronda?
I tuned out the commentary like I usually do. They may have talked about her. Nothing really registered.
Right, she was the champion. She lost in seconds to Charlotte last week. I was just wondering if they would have run up anything.
They probably did. I'm just searching through this trying to find something redeeming. The Cody package. They're building for his return, and apparently they're going back to what they started with. It wouldn't make any sense to do anything otherwise. The dream of winning the title for his daddy. And as long as they bring him back. They need him badly. They need a top baby face. They need somebody with a story that they can half-ass sink their teeth into. And obviously it means a lot to Cody, so he's going to give it the best chance it's got. So, yes, let's have more of that. But then, oh, my God, Brian, this is why you should have watched the program. Every once in a while, it's must-see TV just for an update on our favorite popular group in wrestling. We've been following for a couple weeks since the Hindenburg crashed, the exploits of Flop Dollar and his group Skid Row, along with B-Fab and Adonis. Have you heard what's gone on now?
No.
Apparently, and I don't know whether Flop Dollar knows it or not, but apparently the office or creative, whoever, saw the feedback that he got when he tried to defend himself from that Fosbury flop over the top rope dive a couple weeks ago. They've turned him heel.
Get out of here.
They've turned him fucking because he
That's the only thing he could have done.
He was such a, petulant child. Well, here's a video of me in a barn doing it, and I cleared it, and I was 50 pounds heavier, and he lands on his head or whatever. It was a Royal Rumble qualifying match. Ricochet versus Flop Dollar. And apparently, previously, for the previous week, whatever the fuck that we might have missed in a backstage thing, old Flop disrespected Ricochet. Because he feels disrespect because the boys, apparently the story is a bunch of the boys in the locker room were making fun of Flop Dollar for flopping his dive, right? And that included Ricochet said something, so now there's some issue here, right? And by the way, they announced Ricochet. You remember Ricochet, right? You can get a mental picture in your mind of Ricochet.
Yeah, of course.
Guess what weight they announced him at?
What they announced him at?
Yes.
You're saying it like it's a different weight than they used to announce him at?
Well, remember when I've always said if you got a guy that's so small he can fucking fit through a fucking keyhole without greasing himself up, it maybe put an extra 15 or 20 pounds on. Nobody's going to know, but it might make it a little more palatable, just subliminally, whatever.
215.
207. I would think he'd have to have rocks in his pockets and fucking and a beanbag on top of his head to hit 185, but they announced him at 207, so somebody's listening. Anyway, they actually gave Skid Row their entrance in the break, if that tells you anything else also. I talked about the Hindenburg. This may be more in line with another disaster, the Titanic. Because they're bailing away from this fucking sinking ship. So they ring the bell on this match. You got Ricochet, who's 5'6" and of a disputed weight, and Top Dollar, who, is losing weight. Because remember, he was huge. He was 400 pounds, and now he looks, I don't know, sort of like a fucking halfway deflated human water bed at this point, but Flop Dollar lurches across the ring at Ricochet like a bucket of disconnected body parts and starts kicking the shit out of him. And he was working full heel. It didn't look bad at first because he wasn't actually trying any moves. He was just mauling the smaller guy and getting all over him and trash. He can do the trash talking. Because we mentioned Flop Dollar is convinced that he is a superstar. But within 2 minutes, Ricochet hit a kick and a small package and a flippy move and a shooting star press off the top, 1, 2, 3. So within 2 minutes, they beat I've never seen a manatee defeated that easily before. They generally put up a bigger fight. So boom. So they've switched him heel based on Flop Dollar's reaction to his botch on social media. They gave him their entrance in the break. They beat him with a guy half his size in 2 minutes. And then old Flop Dollar offers his hand to Ricochet, and they shook hands, and then all of Skid Row attacked him and beat him up until here came Brown Strongman and ran in and made the save. So is this a way to say, well, we're gonna get 6 weeks of something out of these morons before we bid them adieu again? That's what it would sounded like back in the territory days.
I don't know.
So anyway, finally, we get back to the Bloodline. Roman Reigns has asked for Sami Zayn's presence in the locker room. And they go to the break and they come back and Sami's there. Imagine if he'd have been late. It would have screwed up their whole show. And Sami, of course, tells Roman that he's not trying to take over. He don't want to be the tribal chief. He's apologizing. And then Roman Reigns says, I don't accept that apology. And then he starts being philosophical, Reigns does. He says, I'm the tribal chief. I set a standard. I've got to control my anger. I shouldn't have done that in public. He's apologizing to Sami. I shouldn't have lost control like that. Should have done it in private. Because Owens was right. I'm mad at him. I'm taking it out on you. I've got a Kevin Owens problem. But we're going to fix it. Because next week, Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. And I think, oh my God. I think Sami and Owens are writing this program now because anytime they get a chance to work with each other, but at least that'll be interesting next week. And then finally, again, Brian, you'll never guess what the main event on this program was. How many wrestlers they got on this roster in the WWE universe?
I don't know.
We counted, well, that was before the big initial firing. We had counted 200. They got rid of a lot, but they've hired a lot back. The Usos versus Sheamus and Drew McIntyre was the main event. And at this point, it's for the tag team title, by the way. It's nothing wrong with these guys' work. It just seems like this is the same thing with the same people. And nobody thinks the belts are changing hands on a 14-minute TV match. And that includes the last break in that 14 minutes. And it turned into a goddamn good match. But it just that I think all of the WWE shows look the same. Matches are set up the same way. People interact with the same people a lot. And it's not even like the territory days where you see the angle of the interaction or the clip of the interaction and you're expected to pay to see the non-televised house show. You're watching it on TV every week, and it's harder to get into. But anyway, as I said, this was a good match that got the people in the arena. I don't know what it did for their ratings, but at the end, finally, the Usos, they have these little magical finishes they do where Sheamus went for his finish, but Jimmy had tagged Jay's leg. But they did a double super kick and the 1D finish, and that was a 2 count for a big pop. And then Solo at ringside takes Drew McIntyre out, and here comes Ridge and Butch, and they get on Solo. and Sheamus wiped out the Usos, but one of them schoolboyed him and the other held him on top from behind for the 1-2-3. So it was a little fuck finish, and Sammy in the back spilled his popcorn everywhere. So, it was a good tag match and people in the arena liked it. Again, I'm not sure that there's, they brought John Cena back last week and got a big rating, but with the same dozen people interacting the same way on a 2-hour network television program every week, I don't think that it's different enough to snag people's attention that, oh, shit, I need to watch this again after I've taken so long from doing that. What do you think, Brian?
We just talked about it with the Dynamite ratings, the idea that there is a large audience, specifically a younger and younger audience that doesn't care about cable TV or primetime TV, doesn't watch TV, doesn't care about what time a show comes on because they'll watch whatever they want whenever they want it. The exception being when something is live and you have to see it. Right there in the moment. Like a big sports game. Whatever it may be. A big finale of a show. It's happening. It's cultural. I need to see it. Whether that's 50 million people or 1 million people who feel that way. I don't think WWE or by and large AEW produce that feeling from fans often. So it becomes, hey, SmackDown was last night. Let me go to Twitter and see what happened. SmackDown was last night. Let me go to YouTube and watch the highlights. Or let me go to my DVR and fast forward. You have to give people a reason to stop on a Friday night or whatever night and say, I need to watch this live. And when you have a track record of not producing that, it also takes a while to get people trained to actually think something could happen again.
Well, the thing is also they've gone to such pains in the past to the WWE is sports programming when it's convenient, but they don't present the program like a sport. And then when the other, which is SmackDown and Fox considers themselves sports, whereas USA, they're in the entertainment classification. Is that correct?
I believe so.
It's one or the other. I think it's that one. But the point is, rights fees for live sports are the things that go up drastically. I know there's rights fees for everything these days, but the sports is what's made the splash, and I would think they would try to have more of that presentation if they're trying to sell themselves as live sports. If it's a scripted entertainment program, like they used to say with USA, who still considers them entertainment, the longest running dramatic program, whatever the fuck, well, then you can watch that next week. It's not time dated. If you haven't seen it, it's new to you, whatever. The urgency isn't there, maybe, in some people's minds, besides the, 2 million people left. That's the WWE audience, for better or worse. But I don't see anything live like the days of the Attitude Era of surprising things going on. And I'm not talking about the stuff in the bathroom or whatever. I'm talking about the stuff with an Austin or a Rock or whatever, the big shit. I don't see the urgency of anything can happen or shocking or different or whatever on the WWE programs. They're slickly produced and all the talent makes their own matches and it flows from one thing to another and it all looks the same, especially Raw's 3 hours long. And on the other programming, AEW, you and I actually probably have more reason to watch that live than most people do, because there is the chance that anything can happen. It's just that they never plan it that way. Anything, some motherfucker's going to say motherfucker on the microphone on live cable, or somebody's going to, land in a horrible crash and burn and paralyze themselves, or, get carted off, or something is going to be hilariously off kilter. With the WWE, most of the time, nobody's going to do anything so stupid that they just collapse in a heap. Everything, injuries and anything can happen, but there's a level of professionalism. The production is not going to fall apart. Things are not just, sometimes there's things worthy of derision for being phony and silly, but not just completely off the rails, like I started to say Jim Ross, Rick Ross. Rick, don't call me Jim Ross.
That Jim Ross is off the rails.
Boy. So it's like you watch one show because anything can happen, but it's not the fault of the people putting it together. It's really anything can happen because you never know from one second to the other if they know what they're doing. And on the other program, nothing ever fucking happens. I don't know.
If you were a teenage wrestling fan and a few years earlier you had a best friend who watched it with you and he doesn't watch it as much anymore, but you're still into it, could you call him up in advance of this SmackDown and tell him anything that's going to be on this show that would make him, the older fan, the former fan, think, yeah, you know what? It's Friday night. I need to stop what I'm doing and watch this. There's not a lot happening. There's nothing on these shows, you know, the water cooler talk phrase or whatever you want to call it. There's nothing that makes you want to go out of your way to talk about this or see this.
Why couldn't it be the coffee pot, by the way?
Because you don't like coffee.
People drink coffee, though.
You don't.
I don't drink water either.
That, I still
can't get over
that. I still can't get over you don't drink water.
Water is just unflavored Sprite Zero, but nevertheless, you know, that's the thing, is that what would I say? I would say, well, you'll love the stuff that Heyman and Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn do. Well, did they wrestle? Well, no, they do interviews throughout the show. Well, I'll just DVR it and skip through if I have time. It's not like, boy, this fucking show's cooking. They got all kinds of shit going on, a lot of talent. Things are fresh. And over on, you know, again, on the other program, I would say, don't watch this. It'll hurt if you used to like wrestling and don't anymore, don't watch this program. It'll hurt your feelings even worse, except for MJF. And so then you're telling people, watch a part of the program. Don't watch the whole thing because a lot of it'll just bore you or make you mad. But these certain people in this program, if you can search through the 2 hours to get to the 10 minutes of them, you'll love that. It's like the wrestling you used to watch. I don't know if that's a strong sales pitch.
I don't think it is. But that's an indictment of wrestling and an indictment of SmackDown nowadays. And that was SmackDown, ladies and gentlemen, for January 6th. Correct?
That's right.
Well, that was WWE Smackdown for January 6th. Another sad affair on a Friday night.
Another sad affair on a Friday. How many sad affairs have you had on Friday nights recently?
Recently, none. Ever. Not too many. But I have to imagine some of the people out there are having a rough Friday night. Some people out there have a rough every night. And maybe there's not someone that...
Boy, you're having a rough day, I'll tell you that. Folks, if you're like Brian Last and you need somebody to talk to practice your podcast, or whatever the case may be, our friends at BetterHelp can help you. This show, by the way, is sponsored by BetterHelp, as so many of them have been over the past few years, because we've been spreading the word that the folks at BetterHelp can help you be a better person. Sometimes life gets you bogged down, like Brian's verbal skills today. You may feel overwhelmed. You're not overwhelmed.
I feel overwhelmed.
You may feel overwhelmed at this whole thing, at this thing called life. You're not showing up and going on the field and giving it your all like you want to. Because when you're at your best, you can do great things. But when you're not, sometimes you can't dodge all those curveballs that life throws at you or your podcast co-host throws at you. So therefore, you need somebody to talk to. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, entirely online. You don't have to go anywhere, talk to anybody in person. You can do it remotely. As the kids say, all you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, and give it a try. If you want to live a more empowered life, then therapy can get you there. And right now, if you go to BetterHelp.com, that's HELP, BetterHelp.com/JCE. You're going to get 10% off your first month's services. BetterHelp.com/JCE. 10% off your first month's services. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and you can be helped by BetterHelp and become your own person to sponsor somebody. You know, if BetterHelp helps you, you go out, you start a big company. It becomes like the WWE, publicly traded, worth billions of dollars. And then you can you can get sponsored by BetterHelp and spread the word around, and it'll just continue on like a tree blossoming and blooming in the forest, Brian.
That's a forest of no good, it sounds like there.
I'm giving you all I've got, Captain.
You certainly are. Let me ask you on the topic, coming out of BetterHelp, just the idea of needing someone to talk to. Do you think there should be almost an exclusive trade for like a wrestling therapist? Someone that knows the business enough that they could talk to wrestlers and actually help them through their legitimate problems that very often will involve the way they're being used, the way they're being booked, the money they're making, whatever it may be?
You know, honestly, on the surface of it, it sounds like a good idea, but then who would want that job? Think about that. You would have to talk to, on a daily basis, multiple insecure wrestlers, multiple strange, weird, and unusual personalities that have all assimilated into this wild, wacky world we call pro wrestling. I think then the biggest call for therapists, it would be for therapists to give therapy to the therapists, because they'd all be nuts. Probably better just stay away from the wrestling business.
Well, speaking of people in the wrestling business, before we went on the air, you mentioned to me that you had been, I guess, getting caught up. I'm not caught up.
I've got a dossier here. Go ahead.
With the exploits of the Paul brothers. Of course, Logan Paul may be the Rookie of the Year for 2022. And his brother Jake, who has had a presence during his matches and is a celebrity in his own right. Apparently you've been keeping up, or you're now caught up, as I said, with what's going on with them.
Well, I'm working the Paul brothers beat. Actually, what I did was I got an investigator on him. I hired the noted investigator Jack from Finland. Have you heard about Jack from Finland?
Jack to finish? No, I have not.
Boy, don't do anything. Jack from Finland will find out if you do anything untoward or out of the way. He's got a complete dossier that he has forwarded. No, we've been talking about the Paul brothers, and specifically Logan. I don't know which one's the older, which one's the younger. I hope they didn't come out at the same time. Side-by-side births generally lead to consequences for the mother. But we've heard that, they got in trouble one time and I've been on the periphery of reading about this story in the past. They made fun of the suicide forest in Japan or whatever, and they got heat for that, and they've been known to, as Rocky Johnson used to say, shoot their moose off on the social media a little bit. But here, Jack from Finland has sent a dossier. Apparently, he's been following these characters around. He's compiled a list of their exploits, and they've gotten more heat outside of the wrestling business than I realized. Brian, would you like to hear of some of their outside the ring shenanigans and tomfoolery?
Sure, and just so you know, the first time I ever heard of them or either one of them was Jake Paul was on a show on Disney Channel that my kids used to watch. So all I knew was it was a Disney kid actor.
So now this gives some of these things a whole new complexion now. If this guy used to be on the Disney Channel, all right, well, let's talk about these characters then. And Jackson, by the way, each one of these claims that he makes against the Paul brothers, he has a source in case we want to call bullshit. I can't give you the link here or whatever, but if you click on, he did have a source for all these stories. Business Insider. No, Business Insider, New York Times, Vanity Fair, New York Times again, various major media publications. So anyway, he begins, the Paul brothers rose to fame a number of years ago by making short videos on Vine. I guess for those of you who don't know, Vine is a street in Hollywood that intersects with Hollywood and Hollywood and Vine. So I guess they were making short videos on the corner of Hollywood and Vine. Is that what I'm
They were
reading
making
here?
short-form digital videos and using a platform called Vine.
Oh, isn't that what I said?
No, not even close.
Not even close. But they were making short videos on Vine and eventually moving to a house in L.A. where they published the address and started to terrorize the neighborhood with noise pollution, lighting a mattress on fire outside the house. Boy, you got to get a lot of friction going before you'll set one of them mattresses on fire. Parties, and on one occasion, claiming that one neighbor loosened a tire in their car, which came off during driving on a highway, which led their fans to harass the neighbors. So, bad neighbors. And apparently Jake filmed the neighbors without permission for a video, so they got sued for most of these. Sometimes their filmings had hundreds of fans just gathered at the house. LAPD visited the house 32 times in 5 days at one point. Now, what? Okay.
Again, Disney star and his brother making videos, giving out their address. I got to go see this guy I've been watching on TV. That's how you build an audience.
Can you imagine living next to these knuckleheads and they've got hundreds of people around the house and the cops show up 32 times in 5 days? And that's not exactly keeping a low profile. Okay,
That's more than one neighbor calling.
Yes, I don't think if I know like Fanny Featherbottom, she would be one to call the police 52 times or whatever, but she doesn't live out there. She lives here. He goes on, during the George Floyd protests in Arizona, Jake Paul was recorded among looters in a mall, bashing a car window, and one clip appears to show him handling a stolen bottle of vodka, is the quote. Parenthetically, for the record, the mall looters were absolutely not affiliated with the Black Lives Matter movement. He was also raided by the FBI in relation to this. Wait a minute, this is the end of it. He was also raided by the FBI in relation to this. Now, wait, so Jake Paul is so upset about the George Floyd situation that he joined looters in a mall, bashing a car window and handling stolen bottles of vodka.
I'm so confused by this because I've never heard anything about this before. I think I would have.
Sources from New York Times and Inside Edition.
So George Floyd, the protests are happening in the streets. Meanwhile, him and a bunch of hooligans decide to start looting the mall, and someone spots him. Hey, it looks like this Jake Paul. He's stealing vodka.
Yes, of all the people that have the perfect right to be pissed off about the George Floyd situation, I don't know that Jake Paul is among them.
This is crazy.
Oh, also, Jake, I believe this is Jake. He hosted a large party during quarantine, saying that the virus was a hoax, but he backtracked after being told off by everyone. Apparently now another rapper, well, they're not rappers, I guess. One rapper, Post Malone, who apparently is the grandson of Pat Malone, the Green Shadow, I don't know. He said in a podcast that Jake's fan merchandise was hilarious and that he bought it to laugh at it with his friends. This led to Jake showing up at his door, personally delivering the merchandise and filming the encounter without the rapper's knowledge. He published the video without censoring the address, so Mr. Malone had to move afterwards.
Wow.
Then there's his brother Logan. This guy who rose into fame along with his brother made a very unfortunate trip to Japan in 2017, 2018. And I've heard about this somewhat, where he visited a forest where people have been known to go and end their own lives. He came across a dead body, filmed it for his YouTube video with him laughing around it, presumably out of the shock of seeing a dead body. Well, that's the first thing I do when I see a dead body is break down laughing. Second would be, how can I get the fuck out of here?
That is a weird reaction.
He did apologize on Twitter with one of those bragging apologies. Hey, I get a lot of views. I work a lot type of deals. Oh, and on the same trip, he visited a sacred temple where people can throw a coin in and make a wish and pray silently. The cameraman asked him about his wishes, and he responded with, and I quote, health, happiness, and hella bitches, as he turned around and chucked a fistful of coins in the fountain that there are people praying around. The thing that he throws the coins in there. Before this trip, he released a song where he was singing about his own merchandise for Christmas and fucking Mrs. Santa Claus. I saw mommy, daddy fucking Mrs. Santa Claus. I don't know.
Mrs. Santa Claus, not Mrs. Claus. You went with the full name.
Mrs. Santa Claus, that's what he wrote here. Mrs. Santa, well, they're very proper over in Finland. You know those Finns. He continues, both brothers are known also for their, parenthetically, for legal reasons, allegedly scammy NFTs and crypto. I've heard something about this recently.
You know, we've been getting a lot of emails about this. This part I've kind of been following a little bit.
Well, he said the estimates of how much the brothers have actually managed to, allegedly, pump and dump these different projects vary, but they are around $2 to $3 million per brother in total. Could be higher, could be lower. Unfortunately for Jake, he's now named as a defendant on one class action lawsuit for promoting one of these things, Safe Moon. Now, Safe Moon, that sounds like one of those Japanese anime video games we were talking about here a few months ago, where the dating game. Or that Safe Moon, that sounds very familiar.
If the one-man gang turned babyface in 85.
Oh, Moon, the one-man gang, brother. He bad. Anyway, Jack from Finland continues. The most infamous of these projects, however, I guess these NFTs and crypto things and such, the most infamous of these projects is Dink Doink. They ripped off South Park's animation style and made a love song promoting this. The song starts off with the singer saying, Dink Doink is his favorite coin. Want you to dink on my face and take a doink on my chest.
What? I didn't hear about this either.
Apparently, parenthetically, this is still on YouTube. I hate to say that we might have made him some money. The central essence of all their projects have been the absurd references to dicks and sex, so they could then easily say, well, it wasn't serious, while raking in some money from other people. Even the New York Times has reported both of the brothers' somewhat suspicious activities in the crypto space. Apparently now, he says, now I'd say you're unfortunately up to speed on the Paul brothers' history. They've just made news on this crypto coin currency business, have they not?
They did.
Again, because this came from December. This is an email from December.
No, they've been in the news for something. I'll see what I can find out. He's in the news today in the New York Post. From the New York Post, here's the headline. Pig allegedly owned by YouTube star Logan Paul abandoned, rescued.
Wait a minute. When you said he's in the news today or the New York Post, pig allegedly, I thought, well, why are they so fucking hot at him? Oh, this is fucking pig. He allegedly did this shit, but we're going to call him a pig anyway. So he had a pig, and he was mistreated, or not mistreated, but not well cared for by Mr. Paul.
This is really worded in an interesting way. A pet pig owned by a, in quotes, famous YouTuber has been found abandoned in a field in a mangled state.
What?
Animal rescuers claim. Pearl, that's the pig. Pearl was allegedly found alone next to another pig who had passed away with a life-threatening infection in her uterus. Thankfully, she pulled through.
Wait, but did they do a goddamn post-mortem, an autopsy on the pig to find cause of death? That doesn't seem like something that'd be visually obvious.
Well, let's go back to Pearl. Thankfully, she pulled through.
Pearl, 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 don't give your love to Earl. I can give you diamond rings. I can give you many things.
Though she is reportedly lucky to be alive. Footage of her heartbreaking plight has been shared by the Gentle Barn, a U.S. animal sanctuary who rescued Pearl from what they said would have likely been death. The now viral TikTok video details the dire straits the pig was in when found and claims Pearl was, quote, purchased originally from a breeder by an influencer. Boy, they just don't want to name who it is here.
Well, now, wait, is this a full-size pig?
This is a giant fucking pig. Dare I say, to the layman who knows nothing about pigs, I would go, that's a hog. But it probably isn't. But it's a big pig. To me.
Well, and I've seen some people that you've associated with, so you would know how to measure and scope and estimate the size of various pigs.
While her previous owner hasn't been directly named, social media has been quick to speculate the pig was once owned by YouTube megastar Logan Paul. Logan Paul, 27, has yet to comment but has shared several photos and videos with his pet pig. Also,
okay. So I was going to say, how did they come to but he's actually put the videos and the pictures out of him with poor, what was it? What was its name?
He has shared several photos and videos with his pet pig, also named Pearl, in the past. The Gentle Barn Sanctuary explained many pigs are often bought under the guise of being a mini breed and cause issues for owners when they grow up to be much bigger than expected.
Well, but there ain't that many pigs named Pearl. That ought to narrow it down somewhat.
Here's a quote. People often buy mini pigs or teacup pigs for clout online, believing they will stay small.
Clout online?
When they inevitably grow very large. Hold on.
Wait. We're burying the lead here. What the fuck does that mean? How in the world does that get you clout anywhere? Look, I've got a small pig. Oh, Salabim, we must elect you God. You've got a small pig. How the fuck does that impress anybody? If you gave birth to a small pig and videoed that would impress the fuck out of me. But just buying one at a store, I don't know that that's a bar of accomplishment that we need to fucking highlight.
When they inevitably grow very large and have many unexpected needs, they're sadly discarded.
Like food and a place to shit 24 hours a day?
Pearl's clearly been through so much trauma that we can't begin to imagine. But she's now safe with us at the Gentle Barn, was a quote here. While many in the comments section have been quick to claim Pearl is Logan Paul's pig. There's a lot of P's in quick order there.
I knew it was going to be worth doing this show today.
Pearl is Logan Paul's pig.
Wait a minute. What else did it say about Logan Pig's Paul?
While many in the comments section have been quick to claim Pearl is Logan Paul's pig, the Gentle Barn stressed in the video the pig they rescued was irresponsibly rehomed and then later abandoned.
Irresponsibly rehomed?
While we don't know everything she's been through in her past, we know her life is now filled with friends.
Wait, at least this would have been the transition to the BetterHelp spot if only you had waited. By the way, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Fans have since begun flooding Paul's social media accounts, demanding an explanation. On Twitter, a photo Paul shared with Pearl in February 2020 has been overrun with accusations and comments of disbelief. Why did you abandon her? One furious user pressed. Can you explain how Pearl was found abandoned and injured in a field? Another asked. Others have shared side-by-side images shared by Paul of Pearl with the spotted pig in the rescue video.
So the pig's name was Pearl Paul.
In February 2021, Logan Paul, who has over 23 million YouTube followers.
Logan Paul, the brother of sister Pearl Paul.
Moved from his home in California to Puerto Rico.
Well, you can't take a pig to Puerto Rico. That's across the international date line. There's regulations.
Some fans of the star believe he rehomed Pearl during his relocation before she was later found abandoned by animal rescuers.
See, no, abandoned is a good word, or dumped off on the side of the road or out in a field. Don't say rehomed. That makes it sound too nice. He was Pearl the pig gave Paul the best years of Pearl's life. And it was always there to love him and kiss on him and shit in his face and all over the house, everywhere. All Pearl ever wanted was to cuddle up at night about 250 or 300 pounds next to Logan Paul in the bed and exchange sweet nothings till they fell asleep at night. That's all. And instead, Pearl was cast off like an old shoe. Pearl was cast off like an unwanted order of bacon.
A video shared on his social media channel 4 years ago shows the star buying the pig from a breeder with an ex-girlfriend and naming her Pearl. Here's a quote from Logan Paul.
Now, wait a minute. Are you talking, did he name the ex-girlfriend Pearl or the pig for it? Is that why he's mad at Pearl the pig? Because Pearl the pig was named after the ex-girlfriend Pearl that he's no longer with, and he has deep-seated animosity toward the ex-girlfriends, therefore he took it out on Pearl the pig? Is this what you're telling me?
That's not what you just made up a whole fantasy scenario based on a sentence that had nothing to do with any of that. But he was with an ex-girlfriend when he bought the pig. Here's a quote. "This is the best decision I've ever made in my life," he states during the vlog while cradling the then piglet. By 2020, he had revealed the mini pig was now huge. Paul, who has tried his hand at boxing after finding fame online, recently apologized to fans who lost money after investing in his cryptocurrency game, CryptoZoo. He was criticized for encouraging people to buy cryptocurrency collectibles.
He should have been criticized for encouraging people to buy pigs.
For what he called a really fun game that makes you money. But more than a year after its launch, no game has materialized, and Paul has apparently abandoned the project. Much like the pig, the BBC reports.
You know, if you can't take advice on what to do with your money from somebody who says that buying a pig was the greatest decision of his life, who can you listen to? Have you ever been in a position, Brian, in your life where at any point in it that you could utter the words, buying this pig is the greatest decision I've ever made, and it would have been truthful?
Are you done with that video? Okay. Oh, man, I'm going to get so much clout from showing these people that even though I'm rich and successful, I buy pigs. I don't get any of this. I don't. Everything's done for attention.
It was a clout pig.
It was a clout pig. Logan Paul's pig, Pearl. Any other comments about this? Do you have anything else about the Pauls, or were we done with this?
Well, Logan Paul's pig, Pearl, is precious. That little porker. Prissy little porker prancing and imposing in the yard. I think we probably close this one up. Let's put a period on it.
All right, we'll put a period on that. Let's get the next question mark over here, Jim. This one, a few people have sent it in. A&E has announced the next round of WWE biography episodes. This next coming season will be Dusty Rhodes, Chyna, Kane, the NWO, the Iron Sheik, and Jake the Snake Roberts. What are your thoughts on the roster for the next season?
Well, you just rattled them off real quickly. I didn't have time to jot them down. We've said before that they do a wonderful job on these as far as, because they've got cooperation. So they have footage and pictures and, and the only one that I can think of to date that was really a hit piece was the Randy Savage biography that took a dark and disturbing turn. Everything else has been fairly positive, but it says again, it's fun for everybody to go back and look at the biographies of these people they considered big stars when there was a lot of people watching this business. I don't know. Does anybody want to see the biography of the Jericho Appreciation Society or whatever the fuck these days? So, there's more. Again, they're plumbing the well for more viewers and more programming based on the 80s and the Attitude Era, when they know they can get more eyeballs on those programs because more people were watching the stars of that era. So I can't wait to see them. I don't know, the NWO. That's kind of a loose description of how deep are they going to go. Hall, Hogan, Nash, and where from there. I don't know if will Virgil make that cut. We're not sure. But
hey, Darkseid did really good with that Grizzly Smith episode. What should we do? Why don't we do a Jake Roberts biography this season? That'll be a great way to capitalize on that.
And here's the thing I was going to say about those individual ones, besides the NWO, where they group a bunch of people in, because they've already done. They did Hogan, right? Hogan's had to have been done. He's been done before, and he came back. But
yeah.
But like with Jake, it'll be interesting to see, what his life story is now. How long's it been since you told it to us, Jake? The ending may have changed. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those. I think I can. What was the other ones? Give me that list again.
Dusty Rhodes.
Can't wait to see that.
And Cody probably played a big part in it, so it could be interesting. Yeah. China. Didn't they do China? No, that's something else. Yeah.
Well, everybody's done their take on China. I think, it'll be a short and sad one.
Kane,
we talked about that. I respectfully declined participation on the basis of that he got into politics and began supporting insurrectionists.
This one could be interesting if done right. It won't be. The Iron Sheik.
That may be, especially if they get into a much detail on his early years that people, aren't overly versed on. That'll be very interesting. And, or, I don't know, more interesting parts of Sheik's life have been when he wasn't the Iron Sheik on a full-time basis, either beforehand or afterwards.
I just want to hear him one time laugh in an interview, say, and then he sent me another year's check. I stay home. I've never heard him talk about Jim Herd paying him for that second year.
They bring me back to TV, want to job Sheik out. I fooled them. All the matches so shits they can't show them.
All right, Jim. Well, another topic that too many people have sent in. I'll ask a question for everyone. Have you seen this video of Tony Atlas? With some woman punching him in the face and
I saw
stomping him in the face
on Twitter yesterday, and with no context as to how this was happening or where it was or when it was, but Tony tweeted it himself with a Happy New Year or something like that.
Well, I have the caption here. #old school can give it and they can take it. #tough, #old, #man, exclamation point. #stomp, #kick, #punch. It's all in the mind and making me feel fine. And, well, I'll try to get some audio here. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I'll try to describe it visually. Boy, this is one of the times I wish we weren't doing radio. He's laying on the ground, face down, chest down, his head's turned to the side, and the lady in question is standing over him, punching him in the side of his face repeatedly until the end of the video, where she stands up and stomps him in the side of his face a couple times. Now, Tony has not made a secret that he enjoys a lady's feet and always has enjoyed women's feet. Probably enjoyed them to excess in a variety of ways. But I'm not sure where just let this woman haul off and just start punching me in the jaw comes into it, because that's not even involving the feet. And also, to be perfectly honest, if you're down there on the floor, the woman's wearing a skirt or whatever, you might have a decent a decent visual to go along with getting in the proper mood for whatever. Because I got to be honest with you, this is one that's even beyond me, folks. But if you're trying to get in the proper mood, but this woman, perpetrator of said events that we've just been discussing, looked like if you took olive oil away from Popeye, got her hooked on meth for about 5 or 10 years, and then put her for 20 to life in a women's prison. That's what she looked like.
And he said, let's film this. Hold on.
And he said, let's film this.
I have some audio here. Let's.
Well, I will listen.
Here's her punching him in the face.
Yes.
Here come the stomps. Happy New Year. And you wanted to book him.
Well, I'll tell you what, we could have done some great angles. But I guess he doesn't want the boys to hit him like that, though.
Again, I always heard he likes women in high heels to step on his face. One time on Mid-South TV, he had a shirt he actually wore with him laying down and some woman standing on his face.
Yes,
I mean, yeah. I never heard he just wants women he picked up outside of the supermarket to come home and punch him in the fucking face. And then he films it. He's just laying there on his side. It looks like he passed out, and she's just as casual as you could be.
Yeah, she just bending over, and you gotta, not only the timing and the repetition, but also she was hitting very hard in safe places. She didn't hit him in the ear. She's apparently had some practice.
Next time you say, give me a beat, here's what I'm going to play. Yo, listen.
Yo, listen. Tony Atlas in the house, and yes, that is a mouse under his eye, because he's feeling fine, because olive oil kicked him in the face right here in this place. Yo.
Well, Jim, let's get far away from Tony Atlas here. I got an email that was sent in. I'm not going to give the person's name, but they were someone on vacation or on a trip to Japan. They were in the Tokyo Dome, and a lot of people have talked about your review of the Merceds Mone Sasha Banks debut in New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom 17. Let me read this to you, get some of your thoughts.
Sears said this is an unsolicited eyewitness report of the Tokyo Dome debut of Merceds Mone.
With Monet, and it's with attached photos to show evidence that this is indeed a legitimate email, so we believe this person. I was at the Tokyo Dome for the Merceds Mone debut. Some notes on how it came off live. They grouped all the international ticket buyers in one section in the seating bowl, and the locals in others, and on the floor. I was in the international section.
You know, that is kind of a good idea, because that way, not only do they, because people do travel to this event, not only would they put, probably most of the foreigners would be speaking English, put them all in the same section, but then they get the Americans quarantined where they can keep a good eye on them because they're such assholes.
Well, not everyone's an American if they're in the international pool, but let me go back to this. She got a big reaction coming out in our section. I can't speak to the entire building, but as you mentioned, the acoustics in the dome are odd. But the place was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop after the botched DDT.
That's because everybody had turned to go, hmm?
As for how it sounded on the broadcast, they have production crew holding handheld parabolic mics at ringside, so they really only pick up what the first few rows react to.
See,
that's interesting about how they mic the room there.
Well, but now, that may not be It may or may not be the case. I mean, because they had restrictions. We mentioned it wasn't a full dome. They have the COVID seating restrictions. So they weren't going to make as much noise as 60,000 people in a normal year at the dome or whatever. But I would have to think that in the lighting grid, there are microphones, because even my God, on Smoky Mountain OVW television, we still had microphones placed somewhere out toward the crowd where you could pick up the crowd noise rather than just depending on the ringside setup and the handheld camera microphones and anything that's wired to the ring. But maybe they did, and this fellow didn't know that, because you can't look up at the lighting grid and see the microphones, but that should be more directional where that picks up the sound from the greater part of the stadium. Or maybe they just weren't making any noise.
I'll go back to this email here. Masks are still mandatory in Japan, and this was one of the first events with cheering allowed. The only people I saw in 5 days in the country without masks were tourists.
See, I told you the other day, the Japanese people are very polite and respectful and mindful of other people's personal space and well-being, and they respect authority and are reasonable about shit. It's all the assholes from somebody else's country that's over there trying to breathe on them.
Now, you asked about her background, Sasha Banks, Mercedes Mone, before she got to WWE. This expert, and I'm not saying that facetiously, but this person who seems to know what they're talking about said this. I could speak a little bit about Mercedes personally. She's a student of wrestling. She knows what she's doing in the ring. William Regal knew her from when she worked as an extra at TV tapings in Boston and later scouted her on the indies. Regal went to Johnny Ace, Triple H, and Canyon Seaman, there's a name from the past, when they were only hiring swimsuit model types. He told them that if they signed her and she didn't become a star, they could fire him. He says she was the first person he ever went to bat for to that degree. Promos and character work have always been her weakness. Luckily, New Japan isn't a promo company. Let's stop there. If she knows what she's doing in the ring, why did she try that move that she botched? Wasn't going to be the most amazing thing that the people in the Tokyo Dome that day had ever seen to begin with, because they're about to see Twinkle Toes and Ostrich, so they'll see everything. On a debut of that scope and that size, I would have thought she should err on the side of safety and do something that she knew she could hit. It wasn't missable, and it was still got the point across. But promos and character work apparently are her weakness. However, let's end with this, because this may be the real story here. They set their all-time viewership record for their streaming service at the event, beating Jericho versus Omega. They added 40,000 subscribers for this show.
Woo-hoo.
You can attribute that to her or Omega if you prefer.
Oh, boy.
Her matches.
So you mean 40,000 people signed up for New Japan World or whatever to see old Mercedes Mone?
And finally, let me end with this. Her match is the only match announced for the February 18th pay-per-view in San Jose, and they've sold 2,120 tickets, all but 30 tickets. Capacity is 2,150. So off just her name, and that.
So they're about match. Sold out.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you what. This goes to show you sometimes, because she obviously wasn't moving tickets like that in the WWE, where everybody was watching her on television. But if you take somebody and you put them in a new environment with a new gimmick or new opponents or or just get people interested in what are they doing now, the same person that was on the card for the WWE, and I'm not trying to discount her contributions to the WWE, but was she herself selling an extra 2,000 tickets to any of those shows just because she was on it? Probably not. But now she's got attention, and everybody's going, what's she going to do next? And how's it going to turn out? Blah, blah, blah. And this is, again, the most motivated segment of the audience, the people that are following this. So a new coat of paint and a new environment does wonders for a lot of people. That's what a lot of people have forgotten, that Hogan, before he went to WCW and then the whole NWO thing happened, Vince couldn't wait to move him out because he wasn't drawing a dime, because people were tired of it. It was the same old thing. How can I miss you if you won't go away? So now she kind of went to another place, and some people are afraid they're going to miss her. Maybe she ought to get together with Mandy Rose and do the, I keep saying OnlyFans, and people are saying that's not what Mandy's doing. She's on a fucking Nicer Fans site or whatever. But nevertheless, they're doing their own thing, the kids these days, Brian.
Well, let's talk about another thing that several people have sent in questions about. Jim, your thoughts on word that came out that on, I believe, December 30th, the passing of Johnny Powers.
You know, that Johnny Powers is probably, I would say, the biggest name in wrestling of the 60s and 70s that I not only never saw in person, I've never met to this day, but I never even until the last few years, and especially when he just passed away and people put some links up of his matches, never even fucking saw him. And at the same time, he was in a pretty important and pivotal place for quite a number of things in wrestling in the Buffalo territory. And that was where, you know, he pretty much stayed for most of his career. But, I mean, how much have you seen of Johnny Powers actually in the ring?
Well, I mean, the first clip, and for many years the only clip I saw, was the actual Riot video, you know, which isn't a fair representation of really much.
Right.
Especially considering he was a babyface for so much of his run.
And we should explain that the Riot we've talked about in Cleveland, Ohio, with Ox Baker and Ernie Ladd, Johnny Powers was the third guy in there. And it was an angle where Powers had just switched heel. And that's why, you know, one of the biggest reasons why the people were so fucking mad was that Ernie Ladd was a big babyface at the time. And so had Powers been, and then they did that angle and got out of hand.
But not too much. I'm trying to think of the specific examples. I know I've seen some stuff from Japan that was even filmed in the States with him, especially, you know, Inoki beating him for the NWF title. But not too much, and a lot of that's because there isn't too much. Despite Pedro Martinez eventually having a major catalog of footage he acquired, he didn't have too much NWF stuff.
There's a few things from the IWA, and I saw a clip,
That's
I think
right.
PW Insider put it up, a clip from the old Buffalo days in the 60s when he was young and had the bleach blonde hair. But the point is,
before the wig.
Yeah. He was a guy who got in the business, and I've read an interview that he did with Scott Teal, I believe it was, a long time ago. It's been published in one of Scott's books. But Powers was a guy who got in the business. He had good size and a good aptitude for what the business was about, and he pursued pretty quickly the business end. He got over as a local area guy in the Buffalo, Cleveland territory early on for Pedro Martinez, the promoter. And by the end of the 60s, he was booking for Martinez, and he was a figure in the office there in that territory, as well as being the guy that was pushed on top most of the time as a babyface, sometimes as a heel. As a booker, he did people may not remember this now, but there was a Super Bowl of wrestling done in the Cleveland Municipal Stadium back in 1972, and the NWF, National Wrestling Federation, was the promotion there in that area. They were in between the Sheik in Michigan and Vince Sr. in the Northeast, and they were right up, above Bruiser in Indiana and the Carolinas and Crockett. And that territory was what later was sold to Antonio Inoki in 73, so that he bought his own American World Heavyweight title. because they had their own world title so that he could be a star in America for the Japanese press. But the Super Bowl show in Cleveland at the stadium, they brought in a shitload of talent. I think, who was it? Was it, oh, God damn it. Was it Valentine and Powers on top for the NWF title?
Oh, I was going to say Ernie Ladd, but maybe.
It may have been Ernie Ladd, but nevertheless. But they had 3 rings going at the same time for the earlier matches because they had so many matches, and that had to be distracting as fuck. But the thing is, and it didn't draw that big of a house at that time, that the territory had been in better shape, and that big hot shot type of thing, didn't do it. So, I mean, you see the pictures, there's a lot of empty seats. I've been in that stadium for a wrestling event, and it's big, but they said the Super Bowl may have done 12,000 people or something like that. And now for Cleveland, 12,000 people, that's a big deal, and they ran the town regularly, but back then it was considered a flop. But that's the thing. Powers was in the office. He was the booker. He was partners with Martinez, and he's the one that put Inoki over when Inoki bought the territory, which, of course, that was the beginning of the end for wrestling in Cleveland and Buffalo being different than the WWF, because Inoki didn't care about running Cleveland and Buffalo. He wanted an American world title and to be the champion of a promotion. So they were done by the next year, right? As far as a separate territory.
It didn't last too much longer after the Inoki thing, and by 75, they were getting things together with Einhorn.
Yeah, and Johnny Powers was involved in that with the original IWA formation that he got involved with, and when Einhorn was ready to get out, then Powers, I'm not going to give all the details this correctly, but Powers ended up with probably a backer or two taking the thing over and trying to make the IWA a strictly Carolinas-based promotion and run opposition to Crockett. And that didn't work out very well, but it bought the IWA, another year and a half or so until 77, 78. But he was always trying to be involved in an office, always trying to be involved in the booking and the matchmaking. He seemed to be a business-oriented guy that knew that was where you made all the money in wrestling. So, and since then, early 80s, he was done as a wrestler. There was, I'm sure he tried to probably put together a few things, but there wasn't a lot of places to go. I wonder if he made a lot of friends with always being involved in the office and trying to do some of those things and run opposition to Crockett and etc. But he didn't do any real fan fests or autograph shows or whatever, even in the last 10 or 20 years when everybody has. So he's one of those guys that if you didn't study the history of the wrestling territories, you would not know Johnny Powers, but he was, for a 20-year period, figured in pretty heavily in what went on.
If you were a kid who grew up in Cleveland, he was the biggest wrestling star.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, at one point in the late 60s, their television show was Championship Wrestling with Johnny Powers, right? That was the title of it. So it's an example of, in the territory days, for the people in that particular area who had only seen the television geared toward them, a guy that somebody in another part of the country had never heard of before could be viewed as the greatest wrestler in the world. And that happened more than once in a variety of places. Nobody could convince anybody in Amarillo, Texas, that Dory Funk Sr. wasn't the toughest guy in the history of the world, but somebody in Washington State may have never fucking heard of him before. But there you go. Rest in peace, Johnny Powers and your power lock.
Jim, our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
It's one of those kind of weeks, huh? You got to go to Charlie this early.
Chris Jericho recently had a Twitter rant regarding his bad experience with the Wyndham Hotel chain.
What?
Jericho tweeted, and this is in quotes, "I accidentally pressed wrong button for the suites I reserved for Wyndham Hotels in Deerfield Beach. When I called the change 20 seconds later, I was told, quote, 'Tough luck, deal with it. I found that unreasonable and would like to change, not cancel, in caps, this res. Total swindle. What are your thoughts on Jericho's issues with his reservation? How many times have you had to deal with hotel reservation issues?
Well, I wasn't there. I wasn't even there. But I've been doing hotel reservations for 40 years, and sometimes, yes, things do go sideways. But I don't know that I've ever had anybody on the phone tell me, tough luck, deal with it. They usually just hang up on you when you're getting pissy with them and they can't be nice to you anymore. They don't generally go, well, tough luck and deal with it. But, you know, that's the thing is, hey, that Wyndham family, did he talk to Blackjack or was it Barry? Maybe Kendall?
No, different Wyndhams.
Oh, well, then he got the wrong Wyndhams. Well, then if he's trying to stay on Blackjack Mulligan's couch, he should have called the right Wyndhams. No, hey, it's not that difficult if you start early. And here's the thing. He called on the phone because he pressed the wrong button to begin with. I've never made... How long have I been making hotel reservations? It's 2023, 40. Well, I started traveling as a photographer. 45 years I've been making hotel reservations. I've never made one online. I talk to a human being every fucking time. Tell them where I want to go, when I want to be there, and I make sure that they read it back to me. I get the confirmation number on the phone, which used to be the only way to do it. Now I'll get it on the phone, and I will watch for the email that backs up that confirmation. But I never start and initiate trying to do anything unless I'm talking to a human being. They're still going to fuck it up, but at least you got somebody to blame.
Yeah, maybe Jericho has no one to blame but himself for his hotel issues.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. If he wants to get even, who's he going to sue? Himself?
Well, that's where I was going, but it's hard to play the music after that. Who's he going to sue? Himself?
Well, so I'll save this for you. So what he ought to do is he ought to just mind his own beeswax because he may get sued. Because I'll tell you what, if I know Chris Jericho, I know that he was rude and impertinent, even incontinent, but especially impertinent to that reservationist on the phone, and that reservationist at the Wyndham Mulligan hotel chain may indeed want to sue Chris Jericho for defamation of character. And in that case, I know exactly who that Wyndham hotel employee should call.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the ominous tones that you heard at the start of that was music scored and performed by Ominous O'Hara, that great movie musician, for the man that he brings people to their knees whenever he walks in a room. He makes your knees freeze, your liver quiver, and your spleen turn green. He strikes fear in the hearts of evildoers and perpetrators around the country and the world. As a matter of fact, if you want to see fear stricken in a perpetrator's heart, then you just follow the man, the myth, the legend around Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. It's amazing, Brian. You've seen him do this. He can walk down any street in America, and as soon as Stephen P. New passes a perpetrator, instantly, they start shaking like a dog shitting peach seeds. They go into chaos. They start sweating, and they start humming, and they start shaking, and they're nervous because they know they're about to be exposed. They're about to be found out. They're about to be brought to justice, brought to heel. They're about to be taken to the cleaners. They're about to be dipped in the bathtub because they are going to be stripped of every worldly possession they have by Stephen P. New and his minions at New Law Office, and all those possessions are going to come to you, ladies and gentlemen. The deserving public who's been wronged or harmed or injured or maligned or in other ways put out by some greedy or avaricious individual or corporation. If you've been wrongfully terminated, if you've been poisoned, if you've been run over by a car or a truck or a bus or a motorized conveyance, a streetcar, an ox cart, whatever they tried to run you down with, he'll get even for you in a court of law, will Stephen P. New. And don't even get me started on all the things he's going to do to that energy company down there in Louisiana. This is already in the works, folks, that took government money to pay out to their evil corporate overseers instead of fixing the power grid, left a bunch of people not able to plug themselves in and give their hearts a jump start after the last hurricane. NewLawOffice.com, 888-692-8084. If somebody has damaged you in some kind of way and you need legal recourse, he's the man that's going to get you paid. And we've said it a million times. If he can't get your ass paid, your ass does not accept cash. Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. Stephen P. New, a great man, a great friend of the show, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, and a man who can help people out if they have any kind of legal problem or at least push you in the right direction. And Jim, a lot of
He can help you out of jail, too. He'll bake you a cake with a file in it.
He doesn't do that. That's illegal, by the way. But one thing, Stephen...
It's definitely unsanitary.
Stephen's often talked about the idea of building a time machine and going back in time and being able to sue bookers on behalf of disgruntled wrestling fans. And on that topic, Jim, several people have sent in to the Drive Thru email and on Twitter a recent Vince Russo quote, and I only ask you because enough people have sent it in that it's worth asking you.
Again, we try not to give the undeserving any more publicity than we can help, but this stuff writes itself. This is not a parody. This is not a comedy routine we're about to do. This is not something that we sat down and said, how can we make this guy sound as stupid as humanly possible? Let's make some shit up and then attribute it to him and make mockery of him that way. This is stuff he's actually saying in his mind seriously. He's coming up with it himself and he's putting it out there in public on his own. So it's not like we're kicking the innocent victim when they're down. The innocent victim gave us the fucking hammer to hit him with and laid there in front of us.
The question is, and I'll read this in a second, do you think he puts this out there to get the reaction, or does he think,
no, that is what I've been trying to explain to people for 30 years, and maybe now they're starting to figure it out. We see the comments that they are starting to figure it. He's serious. He means this. He believes that what he is saying is what everybody else was seeing at the time and now and whenever. He believes what he is saying, and he would say things like this in person, and you would go, go ahead. I say no more.
Well, here's a tweet from Vince Russo. Sitting here writing 8 shows for Rocky Mountain Pro, 10 p.m. Saturday night. I'm going to say same thing I told Vince McMahon in 1997. It just comes to me. Don't know why, but 25 years later, it still comes. God gave me gift of writing compelling sports entertainment shows. Why? He doesn't say I have. Just no idea. And the end of that's all in caps. Writing compelling sports entertainment shows. Why? No idea.
God just gave it to him. Who said God wasn't a vengeful, weird God?
It's a weird statement to put out there, isn't it?
He believes that. I know people disagree with me, but, and you're certainly entitled to that. And there is a case to be made for whatever I've done in my life, that if you liked it, it was good. If you didn't like it, it was bad. You could make a case. But at least I'm on that I'm on that fence. It could go either way. It could go to the left. It could go to the right. But almost universally, at this point in time, especially since it's been 20-something years and he's never fucking been able to fucking drop that bag in that cornhole again, he's a fucking idiot and his shit never made sense. And he was a bullshit artist and people that didn't know anything about wrestling. But at the same time, he believes that he was Shakespeare and that I guarantee you he would stand behind everything he said there if you put him on the stand in a court of law and put his hand on the Bible, the Quran, Superman #1, whatever you want to swear on. He was, oh yeah, it's just a God-given ability I have to write compelling sports entertainment. No idea why.
Did you see someone just got sworn in on Superman #1?
Well, that's why I mentioned that. Yes, there's a comics fan. And how about this? The Library of Congress or whatever has a copy of everything. So they just hauled out the Superman #1 so he could take his oath on it.
I didn't know that's how it happened. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. You know, I actually heard that, let's get off a shit stain and talk about something fun. There is actually it's a part of the Library of Congress is that they get or keep or store or file or whatever a copy of every publication in the United States or that's published in the United States. So they got a lot of money up there. I wonder who's working the security. That needs to be the next heist movie. Somebody fucking breaks in and steals the Superman #1, the Action 1, the Marvel Mystery, whatever the case. And where's all this $14 million of comic books going? But yeah, there's actually also the DC National Periodical Publications kept file copies. And there exists a bound set of like the first, I don't know how many were in, 15 or 20 or however many issues there were in this set of Action comics, but they've all got binder holes poked in them because they put them in a binder. Oh, back to the other guy. Yeah, he actually says this shit out in public where people can get a good, strong whiff of it. And he believes every word.
But to do it out in public, do you think it's kind of like a recruiting thing or, trying to, not recruit, but trying to pitch himself for work? Like, look at what I can do.
Yes, just look at me. I've been great all along. It's all the other people that just won't admit it. He was sitting there smelling his own brand on a Saturday night, writing formats for a wrestling promotion that no one in the world knows exists. And it came to him how brilliant he was. And he had to let the greater population out there know that he still got it. Clap, 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 clap. He still got it all right. Penicillin won't even fucking run it off.
Jim, it appears that one story has swept the airwaves for a while now, but especially a lot right now. Am I the only one sick of Prince Harry and his wife?
I've seen now he's got a book out, and I don't. Is this a Cody and Brandy kind of situation where Princess Di? I don't even think got as much attention as what's Harry's princess's name?
Meghan Markle.
I thought her name was Mega.
No, that's someone else's princess.
Oh, but anyway, I don't really know a lot of the details, but he's spilling the tea, from what I understand, about the evil Camilla Parker Bowles. Camilla Parker Bowles and Renee Moxley Good used to hang out and drink tea together. Did you know that?
I don't believe that could possibly be true, no.
Well, it could if you don't pay close attention. What's going on with Harry?
Hey, who do you think Prince Harry's dad is? Because it clearly isn't Prince Charles.
Well, I don't want to accuse Princess
It clearly
Diana
isn't Prince Charles. It clearly is not Prince Charles.
Just because, the red hair, it could have been hidden in the royal family for centuries because of the inbreeding. And then it just popped. It was a dormant gene. And it just popped up right out of whoever's jeans into Diana.
You know what the thing is? I see him getting interviewed. I saw him last night with Anderson Cooper. I watched a little bit. And eventually it was unbearable. I had to turn it off because it's just whining. And part of it's my family acts different. They don't talk to me right now. They don't want me around. They don't invite me. And it's like, yeah, because you're writing fucking books and you're doing nonstop interviews and filming documentaries.
You're a stooge.
You're stooging on everyone. Why do they want you around? Even if they're not doing anything wrong. It's just like, yeah, this will be in volume 2 of his next book. I get it.
Yeah, well, that's because, you're a member of the Lithuanian royal family. A lot of people don't know that.
I don't think that's true at all. I'm not Lithuanian in any way.
No, you are a distant member of the Lithuanian royal family. You told me that when we first met, and all those different procedures and customs that you had to go through to, when you go back home for your family get-togethers and everything. And there's the ceremonial passing of the broccoli and the bowing on one knee while putting your left elbow down on the ground and putting your left hand to your chin to put your right thumb to your nose to wiggle your 4 fingers in the air at the picture of Queen Eleanor of Lithuania. You've told me these things many times.
This is the worst episode we've ever done. Anything. Ever. Let's get another question here. Maybe 1 or 2 more, and then we'll get the hell out of here. We'll have a breaking news update if anything happens later this week, but...
What's going on in Lithuania?
Nothing. Jim, let's go to this question, this email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Christopher in Connecticut. Before I get to my question, a comment on the Mandy Rose stuff. An important factor you have been missing in your calculations and speculation on the money she is making is that the monthly subscription is not the only revenue stream she gets for her service. From her service, excuse me. She, and most platforms like hers, offer pay-per-view images and videos on top of the subscription entry fee. Think ESPN Plus and UFC pay-per-views. You have to pay the $5 for ESPN Plus, then pay $50 for the current UFC pay-per-view.
Oh, well, they get you coming and going then.
I've seen screenshots of these going as high as $200 for a single image. I believe she also takes requests and private messages.
What is the
But I don't know what the additional fees are for. What was the
$200 image of? I take it she's probably not replicating the Mona Lisa. So what? One picture is worth $200?
What do you think of this? Having a personal seat license, and then once people are in their seat, you have to charge them more for the hot dog.
Well, I think she's probably getting the hot dog for free. That's what people are paying for, to watch her get the hot dog. And don't even get me started on the cheesesteak, because right there, that's pay-per-view material. That's the upcharge. I mean, how can I say this in a nice way? Whenever you're negotiating with a young lady, there's always the possibility of the upcharge past what you've been quoted when the initial encounter began. And it's up to you whether or not that the product that you will receive for the upcharge is worth the cost of the upcharge itself. But there's always the danger of getting hit with that. And sometimes you're in a vulnerable position where potentially you're not thinking with the right head, and you make these decisions. But I'd have to see that $200 picture.
Jim, let's go back to Christopher's question here.
He had a question.
This is the question from Christopher in Connecticut. Now for my actual question. I recently had the pleasure of serving Ronda Rousey for dinner at the restaurant I work at.
Wait a minute. What? He's admitting to a crime here? And not only that, but he works at a restaurant that fucking practices cannibalism? And why haven't we heard about Ronda Rousey disappearing? If he served her for dinner, how did they prepare her?
Well, back to this email here.
Who was partaking of Ronda Rousey for dinner?
In spite of her bad reputation.
What was dessert like?
Despite her bad reputation amongst more, I can't fucking read now. In spite of her bad reputation, pun intended, amongst many fans, she was lovely to have. She didn't see the way he worded it just plays into your stupidity. What the fuck? Back to this.
It was the loveliest meal I ever had. I'd recommend Rhonda medium rare to everyone.
She didn't throw her celebrity around, gave me and my boss a picture, and her daughter was the cutest thing.
And gave his boss some indigestion later on in the night.
It got me thinking, though, what is the proper etiquette for serving wrestlers? Obviously, much of what you know likely doesn't apply in the modern business, but at least in your day, what was the proper way to behave? Did you just want to be left alone? What kinds of questions and comments were appreciated? And which got you hot? And from the wrestler side, how did both baby faces and heels handle tipping?
Well, number one, no, you don't want to be just left alone by your waiter. That's the one person you do want to have some interaction with. Yes, to be honest, if you're having a meal in a restaurant, if there's fans there, you know, the old rule of thumb was wait till at least whoever is finished eating before you go up to them and ask for an autograph or whatever. And then, you know, reasonable people will treat you with reason. And if somebody's a prick, they'll still run you off. But don't just go up while the guy's got goddamn giant hunk of Rhonda Rarebit in his hand, having Rhonda for dinner and go, hey, can I have your autograph? Well, there's grease all over the, you know. So no, you don't want to be left alone by your server. Comments that get over are comments like, would you like something else to drink? Or can I get you anything else? How about some ranch dressing? Those comments at a dinner from a server are always welcome. Comments like, that was a shitty fucking match you had last month, probably won't get over. And as far as tipping, no, just because you were a heel in the territories, even Bill Watts wouldn't say, now, heels, I don't want you to go out and tip anybody. Because, you know, the next time you go in there, they might augment your meal with something if you stick them on the tip. So heels and baby faces wouldn't be dining together or even in the same restaurant because people would see one guy at one table on one side and one guy at the table on the other side and go, see, they're all eating together. So that was not allowed, but you could still tip your server if you wanted to. And
bad experiences with waiters or servers.
Well, actually, me and Lawler, it was after a Dennis Coralluzzo show, me and Lawler and Dennis, and I'm trying to think who else was there. This was in like 97, 98. I was in Connecticut and had done a show for Dennis. We go to Denny's. And Lawler's sitting, it's a big round table like they have at Denny's. Lawler's sitting on the far end, and he hears something, and you see him kind of looking around because our server was talking to this other guy. It's another one of the servers. And they had said something about, yeah, isn't that all wrestling? Isn't that all fake? And Lawler said, hey, what'd you say? And the guy said, excuse me? And Lawler said, yeah. I said, hey, fuckface, what did you just say to him? And he said, whoa, humming. Well, I was just talking about, you guys are wrestlers, right? He said, yeah. Well, I wrestled a little in high school, and Lawler said, you just told him that what we do is fake, right? Well, yeah, because that's what we were told back when I wrestled in high school. He said, well, I'll tell you what. Maybe if you'd paid better attention in high school, you wouldn't be serving us at Denny's right now. You'd be on TV like we are. So we don't come over here and fucking tell you how to sling the goddamn hash browns around. So don't come and tell us that we're fake. How about that? Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm telling the next day or two or the following week, we're at Vince's, and I'm telling Bruce this while Vince is wandering around doing something, but he hears it. He says, why did he say that to that fellow? I said, what? Why did he call him a name? I said, fuckface? I said, because he said wrestling was fake. And Vince said, well, it is. And it was, Vince didn't want you to actually even support or protect the business when you were out in public. And that used to drive me out of my mind. I said, well, maybe if we were in a courtroom or even in a business negotiation, we might not litigate so heavily whether wrestling was not fake or not. But since it's some fucking dipshit at Denny's talking behind our backs, I kind of liked it. But anyway, what was the question?
How to serve, etiquette for serving wrestlers.
Oh, I thought the question was, what's the next question?
Should you come over and drop inside terms?
No, I don't think, hey, can you drop down and shoot me the salt would necessarily be.
If a server said the word
what about
kayfabe,
one tackle, get the bread again?
If a server said kayfabe to you, how would you react?
Say, no, my name's not Kay. It's Melissa.
All right. Another banner question on this banner episode.
By the way, for the people who like, what the fuck is he talking about? Missy Hyatt first got around the business before she was in the business. She was seeing people that were in the business, but every time she'd show up around the locker room, whatever, people would scream kayfabe. And finally, one day, just like Harley's coughing in the background right now, and finally, one day, she got sick and tired of that, and she spoke up and said, my name's not Kay, it's Melissa.
Well, let's get another question here. Jim, a popular topic, one that is captivating some fantasy wrestling fans. The idea of Tony Khan, or more appropriately, Shad Khan, purchasing WWE.
Oh, come on.
Lots of questions have come in about potential buyers, but an inordinate amount have come in about the idea that Tony should, or that Tony could, or that Tony would buy WWE. So without dismissing it and laughing about it, what are your thoughts on the Khans as potential buyers of WWE?
Okay, in all honesty, and I think we mentioned this when we did the breaking news on Vince first coming back. Yes, Shad Khan was willing to give his son his inheritance early so he could see him enjoy spending it. But I don't even know if Shad, and Shad has other children, doesn't he? But I don't know if even he is prepared to say, okay, let's get into a $6 billion deal, Tony. You've been doing so well with what you got. Because who knows what the bottom line of AEW is? Because I know a lot of people like to talk about, oh, well, they've done $1 million gate here and there and everywhere, and the TV rights fees. But as we've mentioned also, besides the fact that they've spent, by their own admission, tens of millions of dollars on the video game that will be out shortly in stores near you, the 100 and something wrestlers under contract, and the amount of money that they spend on their production of not only the Dynamite, but also Rampage. And the YouTube shows aren't free just because we scoff at them. They've spent an incredible amount of money. They've taken in an incredible amount of money, and who knows what's what. But that doesn't mean, number one, that Shad Khan is going to say, okay, I'm ready to pony up $6 billion all at the same time. And then what would they do with it? Because, again, this is so far above, and this is not even a knock on him. It's far above me, and I've worked there longer than he has, which would be at all. So far above Tony's level of expertise, comfort, or competence to run a company of that size. And yes, I know all the employees would come over, but he's still got to tell them what to do and decide which ones to listen to and which ones not. And then they wouldn't sell it to him because, again, if you're, whether it's the WWE or whether it's Sony Pictures or whatever major entertainment entity, yeah, you might want Warner Brothers Discovery to buy it, or Disney to buy it, or NBC Universal to buy it, or whatever. But just because some fucking clown that won the lottery had $6 billion, would you say, okay, well, he's outbid Warner Brothers Discovery or NBC Universal by $200 million, so we're going to sell it to the fucking guy that's going to bring $6 billion in a shoebox. And then good luck to him after that. We don't give a shit. No, this would be so far and above over all of their heads on how to run a company like that. The employees at not only at the highest level, but also fairly well down to the middle of the company would be more experienced, more well-versed, and more organized in running a business than what the owner would be at that point. One thing we can't say about Vince is that he doesn't know how everything works in that company, who does everything, who's responsible for everything, and the fucking, the wrestling fans get mad because his booking went insane or just becoming stuff to please himself over the last however long. But has anybody ever said Vince McMahon's an idiot when it comes to business? So, no, it's ridiculous. It's just fucking ridiculous to think that would happen or that they would even probably let it happen. What do you think?
What do I think about what?
How much do you scoff at the idea of the Khans ponying up $6 billion for the WWE?
I scoff at it because, again, we're talking a lot about businesses as opposed to individuals. I think Shad Khan is worth somewhere between, depending on the estimate, 8 and 12 billion. The Jaguars, hold on, let me look up.
So right there, I'm going to give half of what I've got for this one business to make my son happy.
The Jaguars, the NFL franchise they own, well, he owns and his son owns because of being his son. The franchise value of the Jaguars for 2022 is $3.48 billion. So WWE, because they're going to want ridiculous money, and I personally don't think it's worth it, they're going to want almost double, if we assume what we've been hearing, what the NFL team cost.
Well, and now, wait a minute. Was that what the NFL team cost, or that's what it's
worth?
Valued
what it's valued? Excuse me. What it's valued at? Yes.
So the point is, they just don't have $3.8 billion laying around in the Jaguars' checking account. That's just what the valuation is of all of the various things coming into play, and that's probably high.
Do you think this is going to end up being like Turner Broadcasting buying WCW?
That's what I'm afraid of.
It's hard to think of too many other roads. And let's be honest, as we're talking about the sale of WWE and the state of AEW, and they've had a couple of good dynamites, there is a chance that in the future we'll look back at this as the beginning of the conversation about the death of professional wrestling.
Well, and that's what I'm worried about. And I wish they'd wait a few more years, because then I'll be completely retired and they can do whatever they want to the business. But Turner Broadcasting bought WCW for many of the same reasons a conglomerate would buy the WWE today, only the reasons have magnified. Back then, it was one of their highest rated programs, if not their highest rated. They wanted all the content. They wanted to keep it on their station. And they were seeing the touring business that was healthy and thinking, well, healthy for the time. If we're behind it, it'll get much bigger than this. And so they saw an opportunity to have their biggest programming and in-house and make money with it and blah, blah, blah. Problem became they didn't know anything about wrestling when they were confronted with one of those wrestling things where you say, well, you can't do that. You do it like that. Well, why? And they didn't get it. And they ran off the talent and they fucking ran off the fans. And a year after they bought it, the houses were 25% of what they had been. And the TV ratings were down because the talent was disgruntled and everything was sideways because they had all the money, but they couldn't call the main shots. That needs somebody with wrestling experience. And so, yes, Triple H and Stephanie are still there and hopefully would be there. But if some unknown entity buys that, the WWE, they control not only the largest company in the world, but the largest by 4 or 5 times at least. And, AEW is the only thing even close in this country, and they're not close at all. And, what happens if they fuck the whole thing up? Then there you go. But Vince will still have his check for $5 or $6 billion.
and he'll be running it. That's what it's going to be. Buy the company, give me all this money, and then hire me back to be either the executive consultant or the CEO.
Well, at that point, then I wouldn't be as worried if Vince was running it and a big conglomerate owned it as if I would the big conglomerate owned it and they were telling the people what to do with it. Because no matter what Vince would do, it wouldn't be as bad as we've seen in the past. Every time that some outside businessman, somebody that's made a lot of money in some other endeavor or a major corporation buys a wrestling company, it's fucking brutal on the mental state of all the wrestling people trying to tell the business people what the fuck's going on. And it generally leads to strife and chaos and a downturn in business.
Who do you want to see by WWE? Knowing it has to be sold because it's going to be sold.
Mike Mondo.
Come on, people say you're too nice to Mike Mondo. This is evidence of it. You think he should buy WWE?
I think he should. Well, he'll take good care of it. He'd work hard and give a shit about the wrestling business. I mean, it's not like that there's anybody. Bill Watts ain't going to do that. Eddie Graham's dead. Most of the great wrestling minds are gone. I don't give a fuck. One major conglomerate not in the wrestling business would be just as likely to fuck something up in the wrestling business as any other one. So if you're talking about an outside wrestling entity, which is the only type of organization that's going to have that kind of money, I can't think that why anyone would be worse than the other unless you just found a really stupid person in charge of that business. But, yeah.
Well, with that, the drive-thru has closed. The last two notes are what always kills you. This chair's going. Everything's going. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep going. We'll be back this weekend on the Jim Cornette Experience.
Yeah, my show next weekend.
It'll be a delight wherever you find your favorite podcast. And, of course, next week, right back here on the drive-thru, wherever you find the show. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, go through the archives.
Or whenever you find the ones that you really don't like, but you goddamn listen to them out of habit. That might fit this one better.
Go through the archives. Hear the better days at patreon.com/Cornette. $5 a month. Get you access to the archive going back to 2013. Patreon.com/Cornette. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll be the first thing that pops up. Full episodes, clips of episodes, omnibus collections, all with the very popular Travis Heckel artwork. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And don't forget about the wrestling news, wherever you find your favorite podcast, or at thewrestlingnews.com. Free daily wrestling newscast. No fluff, no opinion, just the news, the wrestling news. Jim, what's going on at Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com?
Chaos, Ollie! Get your lazy booking t-shirts and Cornette face t-shirts. Once again, the store is open. Everything's on sale. Buy it, buy it, buy it.
At jimcornette.com. Don't forget the drive-thru is brought to you by the law office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at New
Sue
Law.
it, sue it, sue it.
Sue who? Sue what? What's it?
Sue who or it? Or Sue. That no good Sue. She deserves to be sued. Sue somebody.
Well, once again, at New Law Office.
Studio.
At newlawoffice.com. What kind of name is Studio? I think that was it with the plugs. Until this weekend on The Experience, and next week right back here on the drive-thru. For Studio and Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!
Studio. Oh.